it's 6:30. It is time for Tech Talk Taco Tuesday number 2 live from Romero's in Pahrump, Nevada. This is the show where we have no bumper music, no co-host, or at least not right now. Not a sponsor to speak of. Not a sponsor in sight. Jimmy Lewis here. I'm with the Dirt Bike Test, and this is the future as far as we're concerned. So this is where we sort of take a discussion, generally something that we've tested, we posted on the website, something that'll kind of give us a direction, and then we start going down the rabbit hole that is live user-generated questions. Last week we talked about the Honda CRF450X, the new 2019 bike, and kind of broke that one down, spoke a little bit about the review we did. And this week we're going to talk about the Ktm 1090 Adventure R bike build that I did. It is a 2017 or 2018 KTM 1090. I don't know, they're the same. And I've had it for the better part of a year. And stock, the bike's really good, but like any bike, you want to personalize and make it your own, and I've done that. Luckily, I have access to quite a bit of different products and opportunities, things to test, try, decide whether I like it. And I'm going to, before we kind of get into that, I'm going to kind of explain my kind of thoughts on testing processes and stuff like that. From the very first time I had the opportunity to actually test for a magazine, this was way back in 1986, I believe. We were riding the brand new 87 125 motocross bikes, and I thought that was bike testing, which was go out, ride around a couple turns, they take pictures of you, and then you say, yeah, I like this one. And quickly I learned that I wanted to be better than that, and over the course of getting to ride brand new bikes and going out with manufacturers and having them make sure that bike suits you, especially when it's a stock bike, they want to, try every clicker setting or make sure that the ride height is correct. Being very particular about things, making sure back then the jetting was good. And a lot of times those bikes didn't come exactly as tuned as the bikes these days do. So I learned over the course of the year what testing was. And then as I got more familiar with some of those guys, I actually did some development testing. It actually started out as durability testing. They just needed warm bodies to go and thrash bikes. And slowly I got wrapped up into doing some development testing, and that led me to really learn how making changes affects the bikes. We then when I started doing more magazine testing, I took it a lot more serious. It was more than just doing a photo shoot and having someone feed you some donuts and riding the bike a little bit longer than just the 20 or 30 minutes that most test riders do at the introductions. We would actually take them, test them, make sure that they worked in a variety of conditions, tracks. And then if you don't like something, how do you fix or correct that problem? And what modifications could you do to make that bike better for you? Because when you think about it, what a manufacturer does when they release a bike, and I'll bring this back to the KTM 1090 in a minute, is they're trying to make this bike work for everybody. They want that one bike has to fit such a wide range of guys. And although everybody thinks they're an expert level and they're going to do all the stuff that they see the guys in the brochures or their favorite racers doing, in reality, they're probably not doing that kind of stuff. So we take that in consideration when we test stuff. And you say, okay, I want to figure out how to make this bike fit the widest range of riders when we're testing it. See you, Doug. And then kind of explain what the bike is. And just because I like a bike doesn't mean that it's the best bike for you or you or you. That means it's a good bike for me. And my job as a test rider, and especially an editorial, journalist type test rider, is to explain how that bike works so you, when you're riding it, can, or when you don't have the chance to ride it, you're kind of living a little bit vicariously through us. When you have that, experience, or you feel like you've ridden that bike, you say, yeah, that bike kind of fits me and my needs. So I'm going to move something over here on my computer. so we don't get any feedback. And now we're going. Okay, so back on my KTM 1090, we did 2 videos. They're up on dirtbiketest.com right now. Pretty easy to find. They're basically KTM 1090 Adventure R builds. One is a very short version where I just rip through the different products that I put on the bike. And then the second one is a lot longer and a lot more detailed. And of course, when you're doing this, we are trying to do it in a single take or cut, just to run through and talk about it. And after editing it and looking at it, I realized I left a lot of stuff out, which is pretty normal for me. So, you know, I hit my head a lot when I was racing. So that means concussions. Yeah, something like that. So a couple of the good questions that we got during the week. One, of course, was, Jimmy, what tire pressure do you run? On the Kenda big blocks, I run 27 front and rear all the time, every day, period. I don't change it. I don't switch it. That's the pressure I've come to like, and that's a very off-road biased pressure. If I were doing a lot more roads, I would run it a little bit higher because it makes the tires a little more stable when you're going around the turns. But for me, 27 offers the best amount of bump compliance off-road, and then it still has a really good you know, amount of grip and then flat protection from getting smashed. And I do run tubes in those wheels. I usually don't have any problems with the tubeless system that KTM has, but if you unfortunately smash something that you don't want to and bend the rim, you can be in a world of hurt. And I'm always carrying a spare tube anyways. You could probably fix it, but I just found it's easier for me to run tubes than not have to worry about the tire pressure sensors and the tire coming off the bead. So that is one of the questions. The other question was some questions about the flex handlebars. I run the flex handlebars in a 14-degree bend, and someone got back to me and said that they don't offer a 14-degree bend for the adventure bike. Well, I don't run an adventure bike handlebar. I run actually, it's a standard enduro bend, or depending on the triple clamp I'm running, I run the enduro low bend at a 14-degree sweep. So the good thing about handlebars in general is there's tons of different bends. I mean, if you've looked at some of the charts, it's almost like gearing. You know, there's 100 different options you can do. So the sweep, you know, the height, on the flex bars, you can actually adjust some of the height on the bar, and then even the sweep changes as you rotate the bars in the clamp. So, and it's a very personal thing. Just because I run 14 doesn't mean that you would want to run 14. I run 14 on my adventure bikes. I run a 12-degree sweep on pretty much everything else, and then on my BMW, I ran a 15-degree sweep. And I think the stock bend on the KTM might be more near 15. I'm not sure. And I know on the BMW it's almost like 16. It's really swept back, but they also roll those handlebars kind of in an awkward position in the clamps. So handlebars are a super personal thing. It's an easy thing to tune and change. I run the flex bars mostly because my wrists are kind of junk, and when my wrists take impacts all day from a stiff handlebar, I feel it, and then I don't feel like riding the next day, and I don't want to do that. So all you have to do is walk up to a bike with a flex handlebar and just do a hammer drop with your fist. Just go like this on the handlebar, and then walk to a regular bike and do that, and then you think every time my front wheel hits a bump, that's the feeling I'm going to get. And you know, everybody said they were for old guys, and I wasn't an old guy when I started running them, but now maybe I'm an old guy, and I love them. Every day of the week, they're almost on every single one of my personal bikes. That's a glowing endorsement, I know, but everything that they do, I enjoy. So happy with those bars. So I'm going to start rolling down some of the other things here. Let's see. We talked about the tires and the tire pressure, and another one was asking about the tires wearing on the bike. I kind of say basically I can get about 3,000 miles out of the rear tire, and usually double that I'd say 3,000 on the rear, 5,000 on the front would be just some ballpark figures. And it really depends on how rough I am on the throttle. And that's kind of consistent with all the tires. Maybe the Michelin gets a little bit better durability, the Anarchy Wild 3, and then the Continental tire is about the same. It's literally the same as the Kenda for most riders when you start picking apart the little niceties, and we talk about that in the video. And then another question was about me going to smaller diameter rims. And why would I do that? Well, number one, the smaller diameter rims are lighter, and that's rotational spinning mass, unsprung weight. And if you really want to change the handling of your motorcycle, take weight off of the unsprung stuff. It definitely changes the character of the bike, and it makes them feel lighter. The less weight you have spinning and the less weight you have bouncing up and down in the suspension, it really gives the bike a lighter sensation. So that's the biggest thing. It actually makes the bike feel quite a bit lighter. It also wraps the tires a little bit different, so they're not so spread out and wide. And since they get a little bit more cupped, I guess you could say, they don't have as big of a footprint, and it makes the bike handle lighter even more. So I've tried the stock width, and I've actually I even had a rim that was laced up to a standard motocross size, and I want to say that's I'm gonna have to remember, it's 2.15 I think is what it currently is on the Adventure. Maybe it's 2.5. I should remember these numbers, but it's basically about a ½ inch down from standard, and I went down about another ¼ inch on the smaller rim, and I didn't like that. That folded the tire up, too much, and it just didn't have a big enough footprint, so that the rim I'm running is a little bit wider, or it's kind of like the widest one you would run on a normal dirt bike, and it gives the bike a much more active, lively feel, and makes it feel like the tire bites in a little bit better initially. Maybe on sand it doesn't float as much as the widespread one, but then I'm not really too worried about that because I'm not sinking in the sand. And then the rear, same thing. It just gives the bike kind of a more responsive feel. And I still have the wide rims on my 1190. They work better on the street. There's no doubt about it that they're a much better size for the street, and that's why they come stock on the bike, because the bike is probably, for most riders, going to be ridden 50% or more on the street. I'm just a little bit different. So that is kind of the rundown on the stuff that we were asking about from the 1090 build. I'm going to kind of see what we're starting to see as far as questions go on the forum. I'm not sure if there is anything right now. Let's see. I got a wave. Somebody waved at me. A couple people said they can hear me. That's always a good thing. And if it drops, which I noticed it right now, it's dropping. If it drops, Mitch was going to go open the door and put something in there, and we'll see if we can get a little bit better connection. And when we edit this down, and we'll throw it up on YouTube, and then you can have the full undropping version, because we pull it off the card that comes out of the video camera, and we're all set. So, yes, San Felipe Bob, we know your 2005 WR450 is the perfect bike for you. I totally disagree. If you would just give yourself a KTM chance, KTM 500, and this is going to lead me into my other thing I'm going to complain about. But Bob, you will be happy, because tomorrow, guess what we're doing tomorrow? I am riding the 2019 Yamaha WR450F. So yeah, eat my shorts, buddy. That's how many years? That's 2010. I'm bad at math too. It's a lot more years. But so one of the questions I get from a lot of people is, I'll paraphrase. It's, Jimmy, what do you really think? And what do I really think is exactly what we write when we write tests on the website. When I make comments and opinions on bike tests, that's what I really think. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't write it any different. That is how I think. So it's funny, because I will get emails that'll say, "Hey Jimmy, what do you really think about this?" And today I got a call from somebody, and they called me through my riding school line, which is even worse. And they're like, "Hey, Jimmy, you know, I'm thinking about getting a new bike, and I want to know what you really think." And I'm like, "About what?" And he's like, "Well, I have, you know, this bike, and I have one of these, and I had this," and he's kind of going through his history, and he's asking me to sort of recommend a bike, and I don't, you know, everybody's different. And he thought I was going to give him some special nugget of knowledge, and I was like, "Well, you know, I do this thing called Dirt Bike Test," and he's like, "Oh yeah, I read the stuff there," and I'm like, "Okay," and he was kind of going down sort of, I'm an adventure bike rider now. I used to race dirt bikes, and now I'm an adventure bike rider, and I really want to know about something. I'm coming off of this bike, and then I'm going to go, and he was sort of barking down maybe, you know, KTM 1090, possibly KTM 790 adventure road, okay? And I think I just said, just get a KTM 790. I mean, they're not out or anything, but you're probably not going to go wrong with that. And he's like, you could tell he's like, "Well, you're just saying that because you're like a KTM guy." And I'm like, "No, I'm saying that because if it's like I'm throwing a net and I want to catch as many people." And so when somebody comes up to me and they say, "Hey, I want to get a dirt bike," I just go, "Just get a KTM 500." And with, I don't know, let's say 75% certainty, Bob, you included, that would be a good bike for you. It's a really good bike, and whether it's a brand new one or it's a 3 or 4 year old one, that's a really good bike. And then people go, but you know, I only like Hondas. I'm like, then get a CRF450, Mitch. Right? So sometimes I think sometimes they want an argument, and then they think I have some special nugget of knowledge that I'm hiding, or I'm not telling them. So I don't know. It's kind of it's confusing to me when I get those kind of questions. It's like that I'm not going to tell you. So here's the thing: if you want to ask me a question, don't call me when I'm trying to do something else, usually trying to go riding. That's what we set these times up for. That's what this whole thing is, this live interaction. We're able to talk about this thing. Then I can answer your question, and I'm prepped and ready to answer the question. You're not doing it while I'm trying to figure out how to code internet websites like Dirt Bike Test, which is not my job, and I wish I had somebody that was good at doing that. So last week I asked for test riders. This week I'm looking for someone who is good with the internets and website building and basically website tuning and development. So if you're like I am with motorcycles, with the internets, we should talk. Yeah. So that's the shout out this week. And if you want to be a test rider, go ahead, send me an email. So I had 4 this week. 4 people said, "Oh yeah, I want to be that." And now I'm ranting. So you want to be a test rider? Guess what? That means you come and ride brand new dirt bikes. They give you brand new gear. We run around and shoot photos of you. We feed you. You don't even have to wash the bikes. It's not even your guess. That's what being a test rider is. And you really should send me an email so you can do that. That was all just a load. Not at Dirt Bike Test. That's if you're one of the buddies of one of the other guys at one of the other so-called testing outlets. That might be your job description, but not at Dirt Bike Test. Dirt Rider. It was like that at Dirt Rider when I was there. We fired more test riders than I can shake a stick at, because that's what they thought it was. They thought it was just all the fanfare. No, when you're doing stuff for us, you're testing stuff, kind of like I talked about earlier. You'd better know what turning the suspension clicker does. You're going to be spending all day on the motorcycle making sure that it works, and if you don't like it, you're going to ride it even more. If a bike's perfect, you're not going to ride it very much, because you're going to go ride something else you have to tune and test and work on. So when we do the test, we can accurately describe it. And if we're going to complain about something, we're going to tell you how to fix it too, or at least do our best to. So that's I'm done ranting. I'm going to have a sip of beer, because I think I'm dropping out. I keep on seeing lights flashing on stuff. I'm not really sure why. Who's using the internet? So, you know what? The slot machines are probably downloading their winnings. As people are paying my taxes. I'd like to give it up to Romero as our our host here for tonight. If you're ever in Pahrump, Nevada on a Taco Tuesday or a Taco Thursday or even a Wednesday, come on down to Romero's. Come in the bar, say hi to Janie. Join the Tequila Club. In 194 tequilas now, you can catch up to me. You can try to beat me for that plaque I'm going to get on the back of one of these bar stools here pretty soon because I wanted to do something with my life.
Before Suzanne.
Yeah, before Suzanne, who my tequila nemesis may actually show up tonight to dethrone me, or at least knock me out of the first position. It's not a race. It's a lifestyle. It's a taste testing experience. Kind of like it's a new experience, like Taco Tuesday. Wow, a bunch of stuff just shot out of the feed, like happy faces and things like that. That must mean people are looking.
You're at 11 people.
11 people. Well, maybe it's the internets are slow here. I'm not really sure why. Where's the? So which end is the comments coming out on here? Let's see.
All I know is Janie says you need tequila.
You hate mariachi music, Cameron. Yep. This guy right back here is going to do a solo later. I think this week we're going to get him to play. Yeah, somebody didn't like him last time. And I lost the connection with my Mevo thing. That's why the lights were going off. Hopefully it's still tuned up. Hey, Janie, can I get my 3 tacos? Trace? 3? Yeah, 3, please. Thank you. It is my dinner time. I do interrupt my dinner time so I can be with all you guys on the internets here. And so the next question on my 1090 was, why the heck are you still running the stock pipes with the catalytic converter on it? Okay. That is a question I get all the time. Probably the number one modification people do to their bikes, any kind of bike, it seems like putting an exhaust system on it. And I will agree that they do run hot. They are heavy. They have cats on them. But especially on the adventure bike market, I have not ridden a nice, quiet, good performing exhaust, because when you change that, when you uncork that, those things have so much power and there's so much throttle response, they get too snappy. And it has a ton of power and it spins the wheel all the time, and I can't control it because I want to ride technical stuff. I want to do things where I'm going to need really good traction, and when my wrist is not connected to the rear wheel, which is what happens most of the time when you take the stock muffler off and put something else on, I've actually tried different things, and almost every time I go back to stock, on especially even on some of the dirt bikes that I have. So my KTM 500s, I'm generally running stock mufflers on the 500s. The 350, I do have an FMFQ on the back of it. My 500s, I'm running the FMF Mega Bomb with the stock muffler on the back. So that's my thing on why I'm running that. I would love to drop 10 pounds off the back of the 1090. I'd love to drop 10 pounds off the back of any bike. On the Honda, for sure, that's a big plus. So that's my take on it. When someone makes a really good, lightweight, quiet pipe, let me know. Send it my way. Love to test it. And then it's talking about putting out so much heat. Well, luckily the pipe is down low and behind you. It does keep a little bit of heat inside of the motor. Those motors do kind of run hot. The 1090 does have some shielding. The 1090 and 1290, they put a little bit of shielding on compared to the 1190. That was a huge improvement, just that little bit of shielding. And I'm most of the time, especially this time of year, I love that heat. That heat's nice between your legs. In the middle of the summer, no, not so much. So it would help if it ran a little bit cooler, but it has a cooling fan. It seems like it does okay. And so the next thing is, I kind of talked about the wheels a little bit earlier. And okay, I'm gonna skip this question, hold it for later, and check some other thing. I got a question from the field here, Mitch. Does the stock exhaust increase the torque because of the restriction? Not necessarily. It seems like it's different on every bike, but I think what it does is it just doesn't allow it to rev up so quick. You know, it's like it has to kind of pump the exhaust out. It just makes the throttle a little less responsive, and It probably doesn't work as good on a dyno. The stock exhaust probably doesn't put out dyno numbers, and unfortunately, that's what a lot of people make their decision on. It's like, I want more power, and if I want more power, I just turn the throttle farther. It's that simple. You know, most bikes, when you're riding the bike wide open or at peak power, at peak RPM all the time, then maybe you should think about an exhaust. But if, in my world, if there's more throttle, then you can turn that and you don't have to do anything. So that's my take. Here we go. Back to the questions. One time, which bike would work? Let's see. Yeah, I told him KTM 500. He didn't listen. George wants to know if I've ever tried the Recluse on a big bike. So it's funny. That was the question I just kind of crossed off. I was going to get to that one. The Recluse question. I'm going to get to that one. Where are the tacos? I want to see them first. Well, I have my chips and salsa right here. It's just out of frame. Oh, it's in frame. You can see it. But I don't want to chew it because it's crunchy, and I talk with my mouth open, and it's pathetic. So we'll go there. Drop 10 pounds. Easier to drop 11 pounds off the rider. Yep, that's true. Yeah. Yep. I've been doing my sit-ups, but I've been not losing the weight. That's probably because of this. Yeah, maybe this right here is the problem. Cheers. Notice it is light beer. Let's see. Cameron asks, how about adventure bike tire pressures in the dirt? What should we run? I think I hit that earlier. You'll have to go back and watch it. I run 27 front and rear all the time on the adventure bikes. When I get down and start riding the 650 size bikes, I run usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 18. And on all my small dirt bikes, I run 12. But again, I try not to hit rocks and bounce into things and break things. I try to ride around them. So, let's see. Jeremy is excited for the new Honda 450X, and I am going to talk about that in a few minutes also, kind of wrap up some of the questions we had on that. But I will get into the Recluse on the bigger bikes. So if you've paid attention to me and the stuff that we do, you know that I'm a big fan of the Recluse. I spend a lot of time testing their stuff. We're doing a whole bunch of it right now on the Honda 450X. And the things that you need to know is, just like anything, there's pluses and minuses. And so the pluses are basically, when it's set up properly, it does everything that you would be doing with these two fingers, you know, as far as clutching goes. It's going to do everything that you need to do for you. And when you start coming to a stop, it's going to disengage. And when you want pop, if you know how to twist the throttle properly, it's going to give you as much snap as you could get, you know, using your two fingers. They're really, really good. They've become so much more advanced over the past few years. They're just getting better at figuring out, you know, the way to send those wedges into the disc and expand the clutch pack. So, like I said, I'm a big fan. I like the Recluse. The disadvantages are, if it's improperly set up, if you don't set it up right and don't follow the instructions, it's going to be improperly set up. And then if you don't know how you want it tuned, and we have an article on Dirt Bike Test that tells you how to tune a Recluse clutch and kind of gives you the different things to do to get different feels out of it. That's using different springs and different wedges inside of the clutch disc, the EXP disc. If you don't do that, you might not have the performing clutch that you want. So you kind of have to know how, what you're looking for. Do you want more bite? Do you want a little bit of drag so that it doesn't completely freewheel when you lock the rear wheel up? There's always a little bit of drag on it. There's lots of things that you can change in that setting, and then you should be really happy with it. But here's the caveat. When that bike stalls, when the bike is not running, that bike is like it's in neutral, so it's going to want to roll backwards on you. So if you're riding up an uphill and you stall, that bike is going to go backwards if you don't get the rear brake. Some people take the clutch lever completely off and replace it with the rear brake. I have one of those. Actually, I have both the clutch lever and a brake lever up there on one of my bikes, and I never use it unless I jump off the motorcycle to the side where I'm not on the brake anymore. And sometimes even when I do that, I don't do it. I just basically throw the bike into the side of the hill, and hopefully it sticks. So that's kind of the disadvantage of the Recluse. And do I have them on my big bikes? No. Do I want them on my big bikes? Maybe. Especially if I were riding in traffic, doing a lot of riding in traffic, I think it would be really good. But the problem is I do a lot of demonstrations on my big bikes. People are always, I go to do demos, riding instruction demos, and I need to explain clutch use. So if I don't have a clutch on my bike, it's kind of hard to do, and I never know which one I'm going to be using, so I haven't put it in one. And then most of the time when I'm riding my adventure bike, I'm not really doing something that's using the clutch that much, you know. And the way I teach and the way I think that a clutch should be used is the clutch is used as a power amplifier, not a power reducer. So the only time I'm really on the clutch, because adventure bikes have so much power, is when I'm going slower than the gear I'm in. So I want to go 5 miles an hour in first gear. Well, you can't let the clutch out and do 5 miles an hour in first gear. The bike just wants to go too fast for that. So when I'm going slower than the gear I'm in, maybe I'm riding up to an obstacle and I need a big burst of power with some acceleration of the rear wheel. So I might be on the clutch in second gear and then there's third gear and then give it a boost of power to climb a hill or do something like that. So in that sense, and with the new Recluses, you can use the clutch to boost and amplify the power, but it kind of depends on what you're looking for. So no, I don't have them on my bikes. I've ridden them on some other people's bikes. They work just fine, but not like, I mean, when I'm trail riding, when I'm really doing technical trails and stuff like that, I love it. I'm a big fan. So that's the Recluse question. Hopefully it answered your question there. And the tacos are in. Tacos are here. Jeremy, see the taco here? I'm not going to eat it. Well, I might maybe in a second, but again, no eating with your mouth. What tequila are you ordering next? Whatever new tequila George gets. I don't know what my my last one was. We'll get the Janie over here to give us the tequila of the week. What was the tequila of the week? She's coming over. Oh, she's answering the question online. Why don't you talk into the microphone here, Janie? I think I can even put you on the, if this thing comes back alive. Yeah, you. Everybody, this is Janie. I'm gonna see if I can switch the camera over here. Maybe it actually. Let's see. It's got to reconnect.
Only a few.
Oh, she's got a dirt bike, sir. So Janie is a.
You can say it. You can say it.
She rides Harleys, mostly. So, she, yeah. Okay, there we go. There's Janie. She's on.
Yeah.
She's on the live feed now.
Okay. Hi,
Okay.
y'all.
So this is Janie. She is the bartender here at Romero's, and she's the one that is going to tell us what tequila did I have. Well, I cheated. I cheated on my tequila contest because I came in on Saturday and found out that they had new ones, 3 new ones. What were they? I stumped the bartender.
No. I only saw the bottles once.
Yeah,
but
okay.
He only liked one of them, but he has had all of the tequilas that we've had. So, and I think it was Troy Hicks asked what tequila you're gonna do next.
Yep.
So
the next one that George brings in here.
Well, yeah, but do you want tequila tonight?
I can have
one sampler or
no,
one
just
tequila?
just one tequila.
Okay.
I'll have a Loma Azul.
Okay. Silver Reposado.
Reposado.
Okay.
That is currently one of my 2 favorites.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're looking for one, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is good. Okay. Now, show him my shirt.
Okay, let's see
Okay.
if you have to. Let's see if we can move the camera around here. Turn around to the back there. I think it's gonna. You're gonna have to stand up next to the guitar. Block the guitar. Oh, we lost connection here. Great.
Oh, man.
We'll see if it figures it out.
Yeah, but you look really good pixelated. Oh, you're back.
We're back?
Yep.
Okay. Connect. How?
Are you showing my shirt?
I'm trying to.
Okay.
I'm a one-man show here. And I'm working with
Was it
broke
Van Halen song about me?
broken internets. It's not my phone is not responding anymore, so connect. Here we go. Well, it says it's big. Okay, we'll worry about her shirt. Her shirt says desert riding. But because football, baseball, and golf only require 1 ball. Hey, some people only have 1 from motorcycle accidents too, not me. Let's see. Back onto the thing here. I saw another question here someplace. Discuss the difference between the Honda 450X and the Ktm Excs. I will do that. That's what I move on to next. So let's kind of go back, and hey, I'm back. So last week we had a few questions after the show on the Honda 450X, and one of them was, and this will lead into the how they compare to KTM Excs. How is the 2019 CRF450X in the woods? Luckily, I have, before it started snowing, I got a chance to take it up in our high altitude trails up in the woods and trees, and I will tell you this, that bike, no matter where you're riding it, is really good as long as you're not in first gear. Because when you're in first gear, it gets a little bit heavy. And if I were riding in first gear, the more I were riding in first gear, the more I would look at a KTM EXC. Either the 500 or the 350, and especially the 350 if you're in first gear type situations. So it fits right in between them as far as power goes. That's what you'd expect. But the biggest thing with the Honda is it has a more stable and kind of planted feel. It's not as light and nimble as either of the KTMs. And I think the Honda for for most riders, it feels like you're more kind of in the bike or kind of connected to it, where the KTM you're more kind of on top of it and able to move around. On all of them, you're really able to move around. It just feels like on the KTM, just a little bit more able to get disconnected from the bike. So if that helps you. The other thing is the KTM is sold as a street bike. So when you buy it, it comes with street tires and it comes with the lights and blinkers and all the other stuff. And a lot of that stuff is sort of meant to be taken off in reality, but especially on the new ones, the whole taillight assembly will fall off pretty quickly. And that's kind of, it's in that realm, it should be compared more to the Honda 450L. Performance-wise, out of the box, the X runs a lot more like an EXC, where the Honda L runs a lot more corked up. And when I say corked up, we're comparing it to a motocross bike, but it's not like the old days where you have to do modifications that essentially to make it rideable. All these bikes, the way they're sold these days, the Hondas and the KTMs are sold so you can just take them off the showroom floor and go ride them. Does that mean they're perfect? No. Does that mean there's some stuff that's really kind of, I don't understand it. I mean, I do understand it. It's for sound. Everything they're doing is for sound and for emissions. Actually, the emissions are real easy to meet. The emissions that come out of the tailpipe are real easy to meet. The emissions when they put the bike into a hot room and heat it up to a certain temperature and it can't, gas can't permeate, out of the sides of the gas tank. The vent hose has to go through a charcoal filter. When you start the bike up, it has to suck all those bad fumes and stuff back into the intake track and attempt to burn them. That's the kind of stuff that these guys are having to deal with, and we want a full-on race bike, but it has to carry all this emission stuff on it, and that's the challenge. That's what they're fighting with. The noise is pretty difficult because you're dealing with small, tight packages. In order to kill that sound, you've got to put mechanical dampers inside of the muffler. You have to do interesting things inside of the intake track because no longer is the muffler the primary source of sound. The chain slapping on the chain guides is a big source of sound. The intake track stuff, the noise that's coming out of the airbox. Look at the Honda. They have plastic covers with foam lining on them to keep the sound from, getting outside of that motor, so that it, meets the standards and nobody gets in trouble. So that's the kind of the differences between the bikes. I mean, suspension-wise, the Honda has a stiffer nature. The Honda has more of what I would call like a race-like setting, where the EXC is more of a trail-like setting. I would take the Honda on a motocross track before I would take the KTM EXC on a motocross track, if that says anything. And I love the PDS suspension, so it's not the PDS suspension. And when I talk about KTMs, in a lot of ways, I'm talking about Huskies because they have very similar components and stuff as well. Let's see some of the other things. So the Honda is really good, like 2nd through 6th gear, and the faster you go. I'm sitting here going, if I were going to go down and race like Baja or something like that, they're both pretty good. I think the Honda would actually get the nod because the chassis is a little stiffer. It's a little more stable. I did ride the 450X on the course that the trophy trucks ran at King of the Hammers. So they had they were T1 trucks. The T1 trucks ran basically a very Baja-like course that had those big, long, drawn-out whoops that were all torn out, and that bike worked so good there that you felt like that 450X was really at home. And I'd ridden my KTM on the same thing. Actually, I had my KTM 350 out there, and I rode it on the same thing, and it wasn't as stable. It definitely didn't. The 350 didn't have the same power when I really got it up and going. So hopefully that answers your question, and we'll move on to the next one. Bad connection. The only way I could keep up was by... Oh, you're drinking tequila too. Good for you. I'm not sure why this connection is going bad. We tested it earlier today, but we're going to work on it, I promise. And you can watch the whole thing. Hopefully this comes back, and then you can hear this. You can watch the whole thing. We'll post it up on the website. We'll edit it down. Maybe we'll even put some riding action in it because we know how to do that now. Cheers. That is my favorite. I recognize that one. Let's see. Hoping to see aftermarket companies ramp up products for the Hondas. They're having a hard time because it's really everything comes down to these bikes are designed so well as a package. So if you're going to change something like the muffler, you need to change something on the fuel side. It's just like when we used to, you used to just slip a muffler on something, you had to change the jetting. Most of us knew how to get into a carburetor and change the jetting. Now you have to know how to program a computer in some way, shape, or form. I've been real partial and had really good luck using the JD jetting stuff. I'm pretty sure that JD jetting is now selling fuel tuners if you're going to turn your bike into a closed course competition machine. So if you're going down that avenue, that's a good one to try. And we're completely out of connection. Are you guys running? You don't see anything? I don't see anything here. I see myself stalled out.
47 minutes or something. 47:06.
Yeah. It says we're still recording on this. I'm live again? Yep. Good. So my computer's dead. Why is someone asking about a 2-wheel drive adventure? Bob, do you know what I have in my garage? How did you know that? Yes, I do have an all-wheel drive Christini KTM 1190 in my garage right now. It's just it's a kind of a prototype project that we're working on, getting debugged and tuned up, and I can't talk about it. I just did. Wraparound or flag style head guards. Some people are scared of breaking wrists in wraparounds. What do you think? I think they're needed on adventure bikes. I have wraparound hand guards on pretty much almost all of my personal bikes and just about every one of my rental bikes. I've about 40 bikes, by the way. The reason that I like them on there is for protecting the levers in case of a tip over. And yes, my rental bikes get tipped over quite a bit. So, yeah, I don't know where the internets are going. I have yet to, and knock on wood, which is probably right here, right? Knock on wood, I've yet to see anybody stick their hand through. I've heard stories of it, but I think it's kind of like it's one of those things that you hear kinds of stories about, just like, all KTMs breaking and blowing up because they're KTMs, or, every Honda valve is going to wear out in 150 miles and you need to adjust them every 2 weeks. That kind of stuff. You know, you hear it on the internet, and before you used to hear the story, the lore about that one guy who did, you know, slip his hand off the handlebar and stick him through. I don't see it that much. It's not a, it doesn't really worry or concern me. Yeah, when you look at it, you think it could happen, but think about how many times you've actually had your hand come off, go in front of the handlebar and down in through that area. And my hands have a hard time hanging on to handlebars anymore, and it doesn't happen to me. So not an issue. Maybe, yeah, let's see. Diet PBR, or hams. You're talking about PBR Easy. Yeah. Yeah, where's my PBR sponsorship? That kind of went by the wayside. I was supposed to get a case of PBR, or no, a pallet. My deal for driving the hammers was a pallet of PBR, and that didn't happen. So, yeah, probably back to the hams. And let's see. Springs on fastway foot pegs, too soft. Any alternatives? You know, I had that on early ones. I had the same issue, and I know they had some upgraded ones. So if it's been a little while since you've had those pegs, give them a call down there. Talk to Cole down there. I'm sure he would take care of you and fix you up if that is actually an issue. I actually think in the beginning they were having in the very early. I remember when we very first started testing those. They had some problems with them breaking, and so they might have gone to a softer one that was. But mine are good now. I don't have an issue, but I do remember that being an issue. And I'm gonna try to get my thing. I've completely lost every connection I have. Now I'm flying on. Yeah, I'm flying on. Yeah, how many? 50? Really? I've been babbling for that long. Great. Let's see. We're gonna cut it in an hour. Anyways, I'm running down my list. Let's see. Also, somebody wanted to know how I compare the Honda 450X to a Beta 350 or KTM 350. I have not ridden a Beta 350 for a couple years. Generally, Beta takes a little bit of weight feeling out of their bikes every year or two. They do some stuff. Little small chassis changes. That bike has remained largely unchanged. Beta's a very conservative company. They make small changes kind of slowly. They want to make sure they work. And so I would bet that they're still 15 or so pounds minimum heavier than the KTM, which puts it right where the Honda is. Being a 350, less spinning stuff, so for sure it's going to feel a little bit less, having less power. That makes it feel a little bit lighter. So and they get pretty good power out of there. You know what would be an even better comparison is that Beta. I think they call it a 399 or a 400. That would probably be more along the lines of what the Honda is like. And they're also kind of, it depends on which form you get the Beta. The Beta, some of them are sold as competition, some of them are sold as green sticker style bikes. So that would make a small change as well. Okay. You're working down the questions. Let's see. Why won't you officially join Fuck You Racing? Jerry's been stalking for years. I never want to be a member of a club that would have me. So I just run the stickers because I think they look cool. Do you think Trevor Hunter will get any taller than his current 5'4"? Trevor, not really sure. His dad's a little bit bigger, so he might grow a little bit. Don't know. Can't comment on that. I'm not a doctor. Trevor's currently recovering from a little broken wrist, so dirt bike test is kind of down to almost a one-man show as far as test riders go. Oh, you want to be a test rider, don't you? Yep. Send me. You want to know what you have to do to be a test rider? Here's what you have to do. Find a product that you like, something that you're familiar with, that you know, and then go on Dirt Bike Test and look at what a product test is, and then write me a test in our format of something you're familiar with. And then while you're at it, shoot a few photos of that thing that you think look good that we would actually put on the site, and then send all that to me in an email, and then we'll talk. Then we can start talking about the test riding schedule that we can put you on. All the new bikes you get to go ride. Kind of like tomorrow, I get to go ride the new Yamaha WR all day long. So, okay. The fish bapping, that has nothing to do with dirt bike test. And we rode quads, Mark. You know what that makes you? You know, if you ride quads, you know what they say about that? You have 4 wheels. Yeah. Yeah, you have 4 wheels. So, let's see. For the average rider out there, stock or modified suspension if you fit the target weight. Oh, that's another good one. So, on my KTM 1090s, stock suspension, stock springs, even in the front. And people say all the time, why? And I'm like, because it's fine. And here's my other thing on adventure bikes, and we're going to kind of end on this note. We'll drop out after this. So adventure bikes are not motocross bikes. They're not competition bikes. They're meant to take you out riding over long distances. And pretty much anything over 650 cc's is an adventure bike. You know, the XR650 was probably the last real sort of, you know, aggressive big bike. So, yes, I'm talking about your KTM 690s and all that stuff like that. They're not built to be bottomed out. Your KTM, even your KTM is not built to, your 1090, your 1190, your 1290, not built to be bottomed out. BMWs, Triumphs, not built to be bottomed out. And how do I know this? Because I felt them bottom out before. And then some of the bikes that I have bottomed out, I've taken apart, and the shock bolts are bent. And so if you get better suspension, you're still going to bend shock bolts. And if you manage to increase that stuff, you're going to break frames, bend rims, break swing arms. You've seen the pictures on the internet. That's what happens when guys try to do what they see in the marketing brochures by those professional riders on closed courses and don't do this at home, all that stuff. But they try to do it and they break things. So if you're bottoming out your suspension on your adventure bike, you're doing one thing. You're riding it too fast. And I talk about this in my school. I kind of preach this to guys, and then they come back and they say, so what can I do to my suspension? I mean, you can do whatever you want to it, but they're really good. They're comfortable. They're compliant. They have pretty good, they're getting better. I mean, just in the last 5 years, it's gotten a lot better. Just even KTM going from the standard shock to the PDS shock on the 1090 shows the kind of, they're like, hey, we got to make this work better. And what they're doing is they're getting better control of the stroke, better bottoming control, slowing it down. But when I bottom my bike out, I'm riding it too fast. I'm going to break something. I'm going to crash. So I don't ride it like that. I post pictures every once in a while of the bike in the air, but I promise you it's a smooth landing. And I've actually gone out with some Instagram influencers and stuff that they're like, hey Jimmy, can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, pay real close attention, because I'd seen pictures they had posted before of guys doing that. And when they did what I did, they crashed and broke things. And I said, notice the bike isn't bottoming out. I mean, I can make it bottom out. I know what it feels like when it bottoms out. And I can look at a bump when I'm coming up to it, and I go, that's going to bottom it out. I'm going to slow down before I hit that. Or if I'm going to jump that, I'm going to find the landing. It's kind of, that's the way it is. So that's my 10 cents on suspension and stock suspension. I think for average weight riders and stuff, the manufacturers do a really good job of giving you a good compliant package that's designed to do what the bike is designed to do. And that goes for the KTM EXCs, that's the Honda X, that's all the motocross bikes we ride these days. And I know everybody, the first thing they do after they put the muffler on, another thing, right? They put the muffler on, they send the suspension off to get it valved, and I'm blown away by how much brand new, never used suspension I see at some of these suspension shops. I mean, good for those guys. I mean, they're doing business and stuff. But if I have one bit of advice, if you're going to send your suspension into somebody to have it worked on and stuff, and it's a brand new bike, ride it for 20 hours. Put some time on it. Use that stock oil to break it in so that you don't get it valved and then it has to break in. Then you need to have it serviced right away again. Because servicing your suspension is probably one of the best things you can do. Have it serviced, especially stuff that can be rebuilt by a good quality suspension shop, because it will change the way it works. And then you have a base as consistent. You're using the same oil you're going to be using, and the bike, the stuff that if there's any contaminants in there, they're taken out once they rebuild it. And speaking of that, I need to get my KTM 1090 suspension serviced right now. So on that note, I want to thank you for joining in. If you have any questions, any other stuff, leave them in the comments on this post, and then over on Dirt Bike Test when we post the choppy Facebook feed up, as well as, which will go up live first thing tomorrow. Then I'll edit down the other one. We'll put it up on YouTube. You can ask comments on YouTube. Maybe we'll revisit next week. If you have suggestions for the next things that we're going to talk about, let us know. And if you want to sponsor this podcast, reach out to me. Got this space right here on the guitar. So thanks for joining. We'll catch you in the near future. We'll see you out on the trail. Ciao.